Greetings, nerds. This is Scene and Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Hope you're doing well this evening after we figured out when we're going to watch Thunderbolts.
Yep, we figured it out. There will be a
Yep.
special recording next Thursday
Yep.
where we will share our thoughts, and it will be spoilers.
There will be spoilers. There will be spoilers.
It'll be spoiled, okay, people? um because we are watching it, and hopefully this time Will actually watches it, unlike when he hung me out to dry with the Joker 2.
Hey, I will watch this one. Yeah, yeah. Well,
And I know you. I mean, you were dealing with a minor natural disaster at the time. I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Just a little thing, but yeah, but definitely we'll watch Thunderbolts this weekend, and looking forward to talking with you about that film. And I know we've got Last of Us and Andor, but content this month is like crazy. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, we were worried about all this great stuff like happening all at once, and here it is. So yeah, the life of podcasters, everyone.
yeah,
At least we know. At least we have some sanity and not trying to like cover Andor the same week that it airs. So I'm glad for just the enjoyment factor as well as just letting the thoughts marinate a little bit. I'm glad we're doing it like we're doing it, which is
yeah,
still being 1 week delayed.
yeah. So I did, despite everything, manage to squeeze in the final season of You on Netflix. And I love how you know me so well. So the only reason, and I did not start it until like I watched maybe almost the first episode of the new season, um, right before I went to bed on Saturday night.
Mhm.
So the only reason why I got through the next 9 episodes is because I started fast forwarding a
Cool.
lot. The
Wow.
dialogue was so bad. So
Huh.
bad. It was cringeworthy. Like I said it last season.
Mhm.
This show should have ended with season 3. This show
Mm.
this is and this is even more disappointing than season 3. I am so glad they released all the episodes at once so we could, like, for those of us who were still somewhat on board and just curious about how it all worked out. Well, it works out in the most underwhelming way ever. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. And it just, I don't know. It just felt like the writers now, I don't know if I can say this because technically I've never watched the first season. I got
Hmm.
on board with second season.
Okay.
But I feel like because it originally aired on Lifetime, I feel like the writers went back to the beats of season 1,
Huh.
which I'm just like, why would you do that? Why would you go back there when season 1, the ratings were so low, you got bunted from Lifetime only for Netflix to pick you up and for you to have like a very good season 2, season 3. And I don't know. It just became way too much, way too ridiculous. And anyway, I just had to get that off my chest that, like, yeah, I watched it. I probably watched 50 to 60% of it
Okay.
because, like, the last episode, I was just like, no, 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 boom, okay, chat, chat, okay, okay, what happens at the very end? Because I don't need to go through all this bullshit. Like, I don't care. I don't care. Does he die? Does he go to jail? Does he get a happily ever after even though he's a piece of shit? I don't know. But man, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
know, you can take it down. We're moving
Okay, I'll
on.
take it down.
We're
We're
moving on.
moving on. Okay.
I
Okay.
mean
Fair
I
enough.
mean, I'm a bit jealous because I know you watched Sinners this weekend, and there is a review up about Sinners that you and your wife did, which was so
Yeah.
cute.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, well, it's funny because I mean, she's usually not a big movie watcher. I mean, she likes, we have our shows we like to watch and stuff, but I mean, she was super pumped about it when we got out of the theater on Saturday night, and then Sunday morning she was like, "Well, she just had like just a massive just thoughts of just dropped." And if you've seen the movie, go check out our review. Because really, Sinners is one of those films. It's kind of hard to, other than just the sort of general high level discussion about, yes, Michael B. Jordan plays twins. Yes, there is a vampire component to the film, but it's not exactly it's, yes, it's a movie with vampires in it, but there's just so many things that are deeper about it. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. Clearly people, word of mouth is definitely like spreading, because I think it only had like a 6% drop off from the first weekend to the second weekend, which is like in these times. Um, it's pretty amazing, that the box office did not drop off. And so, I mean, it even, you know, you know with the re-release of The Revenge of the Sith, and also the new release of The Accountant 2, I mean, it did better than both films. So yeah, it's definitely something you definitely go see it if you haven't yet. If you have seen it, go check out our review. We have some thoughts, but yeah, it was definitely, when I left the theater, the first thing I turned to Charlene and said, "I want to see this again," because
Mhm.
there was just so much that was going on, good things that were going on with that film. And it's one of those, well, clearly one of those films that like it's has something to say,
Mhm.
and 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 is enjoyable, and like I said, can't recommend it enough. So go check it out. Even I know you're not a big um vampire horror film fan, Sarah, but I think you just, yeah.
How much horror is it? Like, there's a difference between a vampire movie and a horror movie.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not like a slasher film or anything like that. And as far as the violence, that's there are jump scares and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but it's, I mean, there's probably comparable jump scares in like The Last of Us that we talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's like that level.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah,
That's what I would expect based on
yeah,
everything that I'm hearing
yeah.
about it. It definitely interest is peak. However, I feel like I've seen a good 25% of the movie on TikTok. Every time there's like people
Yeah,
release so many clips about it
yeah,
that
yeah.
that I've definitely seen the ending. And I don't, now granted it's taken out of context, so I have no
Right.
idea, but
Yeah.
I've
That's why you
definitely,
need to see it. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything about the
yeah.
mid-credit, but you definitely, yeah, just go see it, and I do wanna, if you do, I do wanna hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You know that I'm gonna pull you and the Bear season 2. Like, it'll
yeah,
take me until this
yeah,
comes out.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, okay, as long as you know, like, you might
I
have
know.
to sit on that for a while.
Yeah, yeah. That's fine, that's fine.
Alright. Alright. Well, that leads us to The Last of Us season 2, episode 3, The Path. After Dina shares crucial intel, Ellie prepares a petition to presents a petition to the town council. Um, wow, this is the worst written IMDb synopsis yet, because then it's just a new sentence. Near Seattle, a religious group flees a war. Okay,
Hmm, okay.
that's
Yeah,
like, this is,
huh,
what is this? Come on, get your act together, IMDb. But we know what happens because we watched it.
yep.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, w- Will, what are your thoughts about this episode? We'll start there.
yeah. So, after breaking all our collective hearts for the people who didn't know what was happening, did not know what's happening. Bottom line, that ending was, it moved us all. So now we're dealing with the aftermath, and we get the cold open. Well, first things first, they did adjust the uh, the opening credit. So now, instead of Joel and Ellie walking there at the end of the opening credit, we do have now Ellie's just by herself. But in many respects, I felt like, and we'll get into like more, some of the plot details and stuff here in a second. But just overall, when I watched this episode, I was wondering how they were going to carry things forward, and in many respects, it felt like a second pilot to me as I was watching the episode. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and there was definitely one scene in particular that definitely did, um, where I did have some emotional, like, feedback, or where I did tear up a bit. But yeah, those are just sort of just things right out the gate. What about you?
Yeah, I'll share my thoughts as we go along, but it's interesting you brought up you felt like it was a second pilot because
Right.
in the initial scene, we have Tommy walking in and all the bodies. Because what I think that they did a good job in specifically in this episode is carrying forward that it wasn't just Joel who died.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like our main lead got killed. It's awful, tragic. Ellie is without her father figure. Like horrible. But last week's episode, a large part of it was also about the horde ravaging Jackson Hole. And so
Yep.
there were other losses. And there's
Mm-hmm.
that scene in that episode at the end and all of the carnage you have Tommy and Maria embrace,
Yep.
like the trials of wars. And please somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I know Joel is a vet, but
Mm-hmm.
isn't Tommy as well? I'm pretty sure. So like I'm sure there's PTSD. So what I liked about this opening is yes, Tommy walks into the place and is focused on Joel's body. Like he
Yep.
knows which one it is and he walks over to clean it up. But the shot design also allows us to see like Joel isn't the only one dead. And like
Yep.
that's carried forward with like the burial site
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of other themes in this episode that really allows them to, I'm not going to say justify, but it allows the writers to kind of give more justification. I will say it, whatever. It's the only word
Yep.
that's come to mind. For the outcome of the council vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also for Tommy's whole ambivalence that he's dealing with right now. But why I wanted to start there, I mean, it is the first scene, but it's also when you brought up pilot, the first line of dialogue we get in this episode is "Send my love to Sarah."
Yeah.
After he sees the broken watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now I
Uh,
have a problem to pick with Ellie. Because I
yeah.
just want to get this point out and then you can chime in.
Yeah.
Ellie, you best be going back to that shoebox and grabbing that watch because that was a dear possession of Joel's. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw you took the pistol. You best be having that watch as well. You know what that means. But
Yeah.
anyway, okay.
Yeah. 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 So I'm that was definitely the gut. That was the first gut punch when Tommy does say that to Joel, "Give Sarah my love," because again, it just really just hammers home the point that when they focus on the watch, and and we see, the watch, we think about the pilot, because the watch did, Sarah got that for him for his, got it fixed for his birthday, and then it gets, of course, broken the night, the face gets broken again. the night of the when the outbreak happened, and but also it's just again that through line of just Joel, whether it was Ellie, then later Dina, for a moment, even though she didn't appreciate it, uh, Abby was that father figure, and also to your point about the loss of in Jackson, we saw in the first episode Joel really had become almost a father figure or leader in the community. So it was just so many things that I'm glad you brought up the carnage of Jackson and the other people who were lost during the invasion.
Right.
It just really hammers home the point of who Joel was to so many people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I think leadership is the key word. I
Mm.
mean, they didn't exactly say it, but to me it kind of was implied. There was a vacant seat on the council and Jesse took it.
Yeah.
Like I think that was Joel's seat on the
Yeah.
council. So
Yeah.
it's like he was a big pillar, and you could, with the town meeting, you could get the sense that there was conflict and
Yeah.
there were people who were speaking for and people who were speaking against. And you can't argue with the people who were speaking against it, because you were reminded throughout the episode of, like, yeah, what if they come back, but what if others come back and then you're going to send 16 people? Like, we're still on the reboot. It's been 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months. Like, that seems long, but at the same time, no, that's very brief period of time.
Hmm.
Um I do just, the other thing I want to comment about what you just said, when you brought up Abby. Okay, I don't know if I missed it, but like I think what you were getting at was the fact that he saved her, because at no
Yeah.
point was he being a father figure for Abby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't articulate it as well, but yeah, I mean, I guess it was the point, and also just thinking about the conversation that Joel and Gail had as far as I saved her, and which comes up again in this episode. I was thinking
Right.
that was really where I was going.
Yeah.
So maybe not the father figure, but I guess the protector is maybe where I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joel
Yeah.
serving that role.
Yeah. Um, that's interesting. And then the next scene in this opening, while we're still like coming off of the events from the previous episode, is Ellie wakes up disoriented and then just sees Joel die again, and then they immediately put her back to sleep, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
Um, Another big theme in this episode that kind of picks up right when 3 months later and Ellie's getting out of the hospital, and she has to talk to Gail for the first time in this episode, is Ellie's a liar.
Yeah. Imagine.
We pretty much figured that out. And like, I'm very curious about the direction Bella was given for this scene,
Mhm.
because I will be honest, I like, for me, the entire conversation with Gail, I think I was more annoyed with Ellie in this scene than I was with her in the first episode.
Mm.
Because I'm just like, you're A, lying, and B, you're also really bad at it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
extremely bad at it, and, like, I'm supposed to feel bad for you right now, but I kind of feel bad for Gail, because, like, the poor woman lost her husband and, like, couldn't, like, she's not able to get justice, but, like, you're just
Yeah.
lying to her, like, she has a mystery, which is brought up, but I'm just like, if you're gonna be a liar, Ellie, you got to get better at it, because you're really bad at it right now.
Yeah, yeah, that and I think to the end of the episode where Tommy and Gail are talking about Ellie and the lion, and Tommy raises the point as a nature nurture because they were part of
Mhm.
the part of the context of the conversation was really getting it, like Joel and Ellie and there's similar personality traits, and
Yes.
but so thinking, so that set up in the with the session where Ellie, like, tells Gil, "Well, I'm good, I'm good." I had the same reaction you did too. I was like, "Man, she is lying through her teeth," but at the same time, I was just like, and Gail, Gail basically knew it too at that
Oh, yeah.
moment. But she was
Because
just
she
like,
started
yeah,
acting, like, weird about it too,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
you could tell with her responses and the sarcasm and all of that, but, like, yeah, this conversation between Gail and Tommy is arguably my favorite scene in this episode,
mm,
um, because Gail is starting to become a fascinating character,
yeah,
and I really hope we see more of her as the seasons and even next season, and just and man, I swear, writers, hear me now. We best be getting a flashback to how her husband died
yeah,
because that man's name keeps getting dropped in every single episode and is very critical, but we'll get there. But before we do, I do want to point out this quote from the scene between Gail and Tommy.
mm,
And it's the quote that is why this episode is called The Path. If she's on a path, it's not one that Joel put her on. No, I think they were walking side by side from the start. Some people
mm,
just can't be saved. So this whole idea, like, and something that I don't I'll be honest, I haven't listened to I listened to maybe one review about this
mm,
so far. I just didn't have time to listen to any others. But I don't know how much people are linking this song that was played at the end of last week's episode and
mm,
this idea of the path because that song they talk about a path
mm,
and everything in the lyrics. So it's it's very interesting to me that that song is very important in terms of the game and of course we have it covered by the actors who played Ellie in the game.
yeah,
So like just like how I still stand by that scene that you've mentioned earlier this evening between Gail and Joel, the therapy, like those themes we're going to see play out throughout this entire season.
yeah,
This path idea, it's the same thing. And like, really, the first season, Joel and Ellie were literally on a path,
they were,
walking side by side.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they were. And it's just it's such a good metaphor. And now in this episode, towards the end, we see Dina and Ellie walking side by side
yep,
um, down a path. Now,
yep,
is it the best path? We don't know. It's
yeah,
a path,
yeah,
but it's just I really that stuck out to me, and I love the
mm,
connection because I don't think that a lot of people talked enough about the lyrics of that song
mm,
and why it was so fitting for ending that episode.
yeah.
Um, and also fitting in context of the story as a whole.
I haven't seen it. I mean, I think I may have seen maybe a stray thread or something about it to that, but you're right. As far as some of the other, I have listened to a couple reviews and different folks, and maybe, yeah, because I don't even know if they even the main podcast on it for HBO with the showrunner with Neil and Craig and Troy Baker. I don't know if they raised it to what you've shared tonight. So yeah, I mean, I think that but you're right. I mean, but I do see what you're talking about there. As far as that path, and of course Ellie and Dina being on that new one, and then of course there was the religious cult group as well that was on. There were a lot of paths in this episode, and then also, as you rightly noted, Gail uh, Gail's line to Tommy there when they're watching a baseball game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
They're getting drunk watching a
Yeah.
little league baseball game. And
Which you know,
Gail admits, like,
yeah, yeah,
I need a therapist. I need
mhm,
to go to therapy so that I can be a good therapist for everyone else, but there isn't one. So what does she do? She just gets drunk. She becomes an
yeah,
alcoholic and smokes a shit ton of weed.
yep.
It's just
But
like
yeah,
she's very interesting
she's very
because
interesting. Yeah.
she's had tragedy. I mean,
Mhm.
she's lived through all of this. And then to have what happened to her husband, okay. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting. The more I think about Gail and what they're potentially setting up with her,
Mhm.
and it goes back to the watch
Yeah.
because when we talked about the watch during the pilot episode, and arguably probably later on in the season as well, that watch, it broke.
Yeah.
Like time stood still in that moment.
Mhm.
And it broke in a pivotal event for Joel. And arguably, time stood still for Joel from that point until he
Yeah.
met Ellie, like
Yeah.
figuratively. And
Yeah.
arguably even after he met Ellie, because there was he had a shit ton of baggage.
Mhm.
Gail Gail is of a different mind where she smokes a shit ton of weed and becomes an
Yeah.
alcoholic
Yep.
to get through the day.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's
Totally. Yep.
something about the context of her, like she doesn't have a kid playing in the game, but she's gonna go and act like it's this big major league baseball game because
Mhm.
like she's just trying to be normal
Yeah.
in a very abnormal situation. And
Exactly.
arguably that's what a lot of people in Jackson Hole are doing.
Yeah. 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 They really are. I mean, I was just thinking about that as we were talking about the little league baseball game, and again, they're trying to create some new sense of normalcy. Also, just even the governing council
Mhm.
is
Yep.
uh is that just having a democratic system, especially when you think about the other groups that we've met along the path. Fedra is like is a military organization. We were introduced to the the Wolves in Seattle, which again looks like a very, another paramilitary organization.
Mhm.
That we got the cult. So everybody,
The
yeah,
I sorry, I just wanted to say the call is they're called the Seraphites.
yeah, the Seraphites, yeah, yeah. We were introduced to them in this episode, and then tragically they were taken out. Assuming that it was the Wolves that did it. So um, yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting in this world how everybody is trying to cope, but also but also have set up systems to govern behavior in this new post-apocalyptic world. And also, like you said, I mean, I think that's spot on with Joel, with the Watch, and Joel and Gail, both of them. They're basically in some were are frozen in time to that event, whether it was the actual, the pilot with things with Joel, and now, of course, the moment Joel kills Eugene. So, and both of them have learned how to cope with it in their own ways. Gail just getting blitzed and 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 and
Yeah,
trying
like
to be a therapist for everybody else. Yeah.
yeah. So Eugene is also a former Firefly
Yep.
who it sounds like he was a part of WLF in Washington for a moment,
Yeah.
where or he was aware because
Mhm.
even the Fireflies, like WLF is technically a faction of Fireflies, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Or yeah, I
But
guess. Yeah.
like
Or more.
like
Yeah.
to what you were getting at, it's like the world is becoming bigger, not
Mhm.
smaller. The
Mhm.
more we go on in this story, as there are a lot of different factions and societies that have been built in place as the world came crumbling it down, because like people need people.
Yeah.
And so they
Yeah.
have to create some kind of normalcy, but through that you also do develop different um conventions of what you were getting at, of rule and order and right and wrong. And you see a more dictatorial effort, the religious effort, and just small town Jackson.
Yep.
um but and we did come across a few other factions, or a few
Mhm.
other colonies, if you will,
Yeah.
on our way to Jackson
Yeah.
last season.
We
So
did.
it's there are so many out there, and so I'm curious to see if we'll find more. You already touched on what we saw happen to some of the Seraphites in this episode, and then when Dina and Ellie make it to Seattle, it's too quiet.
Yep.
And I just want to say that shot from the Space Needle was pretty cool.
That
I,
was.
that was a pretty, just set design wise, that was
Hmm.
good. The actor who played Falcon
Yeah.
and
Danny Ramirez.
Manny,
Yeah. Yeah.
like this is the first time in a long time I've liked you, sir. Okay, I don't know what you were doing in that scene, but I was like, yeah, you're an asshole, but I like it. Okay, I'm good
Hmm.
with it.
Yeah.
And then what struck me about the final scene in this episode was it brought me back to The Walking Dead.
Mm.
And it's funny because when I think about it, the moment Dina and Ellie find the highway
Hmm.
and you see the cars, for some reason that shot also brought me back to The Walking Dead,
Hmm.
because and I know why, and I'm pretty sure it's in season towards the end of season 1 or beginning of season 2, where they have to make it through a highway and there's all these zombies coming out of cars. And so like it's just like that image kind of stuck with me. But at the end it reminded me of Walking Dead, because to an extent it felt like you have a abandoned, wore down Seattle
Hmm.
downtown street, and just these people who are all in like walking uniformly, but it's also just very creepy because there's no one else around. So it feels, and I like how they were shot from behind.
Yeah.
It felt, it did feel militaristic, but at the same time it felt creepy, and it
Yep.
and it and it played more into the post-apocalyptic nature of the show.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It totally did because yeah, because Jackson overall, you're right. Jackson has become a small town. It has that pre-disaster small town feel, and and they still have the council. They have you know order. It's a democratic society, whereas but that Seattle just feels, yeah, it did feel creepy. And also I like I like how with Ellie and Dina were going on the trip, and even whenever they were discussing, they were under the impression that Seattle is just going to, it's just going to be not that many people there. And then so whenever we do see this big group marching down the street, it's just like, you know, oh, we're introduced to great, greater challenges. So again, the show, the cordyceps are still out there, but it's not the focus.
Mm-mm.
It's a threat that's still out there, but
Yes.
it's really all the people, and like you said, the groups, for example, we encountered the first season. Now that we're in the second season, now we're getting this next threat to our protagonist here.
Yeah. Yeah. um and in this episode I'm so glad we didn't see a single infected.
Nope.
And I think that was perfect. I think coming
Mm,
off of last week, we needed to, like, as you just said, like, focus in on the people who got left behind are still there, and the new foes that are on our horizon. And it really allowed the actress who played Dina. I do want to give a shout out. She's doing an awesome
yeah.
job. I love her more now than I did in the game.
Mm,
I feel like the relationship between her and Ellie is really kicking off on all cylinders the way it's supposed to, and it's really working. Um, and same thing with the actor who plays Jesse. He has
yeah.
a good scene with Ellie in this episode as well.
Yeah.
So like I didn't get too much of like this felt like a second pilot so much as this felt like okay, everybody take a deep breath.
Yeah.
let's just let's just like
Yeah.
I mean, let's just it's an interesting thing. In a way, there was so much noise last
Hmm.
week.
Hmm.
They needed to quiet it all down and
Yeah.
be like, we're only in episode 3, y'all.
Yeah.
We got more
Yeah.
story to come.
Yeah.
And more people to introduce and things to happen. So
Yeah.
um I now you mentioned you kind of teased it, and I don't think we got there. But Will, what was the scene that made you cry?
Oh, yeah, this one. It was just, and as we were talking about Ellie being a liar. I think this was the scene of her having to, go to the back of the house and go through Joel's stuff. And this scene was just, it worked. I mean, I mean, it was just so honest in Bella's portrayal. I don't know if she's had to have to deal with this in her personal life or not, but as someone who has been in that situation, my father passed away, and that first time after everything is done, funerals happen, whatever, and the first time you go back and I'm sure some of our listeners probably who've had to sadly had to go through this experience probably gets where I'm coming from. Um, it's just it's just gut wrenching, and really just did connect. I did connect with this scene and understand what Ellie was feeling as she was like, especially when she started touching the jacket and going through the things. And yeah, it was just a super we know Ellie always has, she puts up that exterior. She does the things she's like, for example, Gail calls her out. Well, not directly, but her reaction lets us know that Gail is onto her as far as her lying to her about how she's feeling and whatnot. But this moment here was just so honest. And yeah, I mean, I was a little, yeah, this, I didn't tear up last week with the Joel dying, but this was the one that was like, damn, yeah, I appreciated the honesty of that scene when they were doing that.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense, and you're exactly right. We got so much of her lying that to then go into that moment and see pure honesty play out. And
Mm.
she didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Like, and that was why it was honest because Ellie
Mm.
lies through her
Yeah. 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 Well, to lighten things up a bit, yeah, let's go to the to the council meeting.
Oh, I thought we were gonna move on. I thought we kinda talked about the council meeting.
Oh no, Ellie's speech in the council meeting. We
Oh,
didn't talk
yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
To the point about, because I mean, yeah, because we had I guess with the council meeting, just to really quickly touch on Seth, because he said the things that Ellie wanted to say, but Jesse, to your point, he gave Ellie wise counsel on what not to do. But yeah, yeah, that was that whenever, I think they shot the Gale again, another moment where she was just like, man, what is this bullshit this kid's talking about? So again, it's just I guess how how great a character Gail is. And then I guess the other moment that was really touching in the episode and was whenever they do leave Jackson on the way to Seattle and do stop at the stop at the graveyard again to honor to say goodbye to Joel and the coffee beans. And I thought back to like Joel and Ellie's conversation about coffee, how she I can't remember what you call it, like big big shit or something like that, but just again, just that love that they had for one another, that she had for him, and just that moment of, because I think that was a difference that they made from the game to the TV show. Because I think in the game she just grabbed the dirt and you know put it back down, but here they had her leave the coffee beans, which obviously coffee is such a great commodity, and so Joel was always very ecstatic whenever he was able to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that leads us to, now that it's almost 7 o'clock at night for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, we get to talk about 3 hours of Andor.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Hmm.
We
So how
we
do you want to
transfer
do
to
this?
Endor.
How do you want to
Yeah,
do this? How are you
yeah.
talking about this?
Let's just take it episode by episode. I think we can
Oh
like,
God.
but with like the three, I guess, with the major storylines with each unit, because I think that's probably the easiest way of hitting Endor.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
So, episode 1 year later, an undercover mission is sanctuaries threaten a Chandelierian wedding, a chilling imperial plan. Um, yeah, what did you think about this episode, Will?
It was I really enjoyed getting back into this world. I mean, this is like what I've been missing from Star Wars. It's just good, great, just also great storytelling, um, and really hitting on really hitting on the things that George Lucas did very well with Star Wars in and of itself, with allegory storytelling, with with the Empire, with the Rebellion. So yeah, just yeah, I but it was I thought it was a very, these first three episodes was a very solid start. And I think actually I think it started these first three episodes to me started better than the first three episodes of season one did, because we definitely, for the action folks, we were able to jump right in out from the get, with Cassian stealing the TIE fighter prototype, and then also just with this 1 year later, it really did reorient us with all the key characters. So we had Cassian and his story, of course, Mon Mothma and her story, what's going on with the Empire, and then the Ferric Scream.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I thought the 3 episodes were good. It's a good start. I don't know if I think they are better or worse than the first 3 episodes of the first season. I remember everyone being really high on Andor, specifically about the 3rd episode of the first
mhm.
season. Um, so I'm glad all 3 episodes were released at once,
Yeah, yeah,
because dear Lord. Um
yeah.
and I think this episode was good. Like, okay, I'm struggling here with how I'm gonna explain my thoughts in this way. I'm probably gonna jump around people. Like, even though
Okay,
Will wants to do storyline or episode by episode, I'm gonna jump around.
that's fine.
Um, I
We can get
think
through the spy
that
character. Yeah.
um I think so my least favorite storyline of these 3 episodes is Cassian's.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
he had the least to do. It was so annoying to me. Like, I could give a shit about the people on Fairfax. I was just like, and they got the most time because Andor's there, but I was like, I was completely checked out in episode 2 on that storyline. I didn't fast forward though. I know what y'all are thinking. I did not fast forward any of it. Watch the whole
Yeah.
thing. Did I look at my phone? Yes. Um, I also felt like like some of the action sequences went on way too long, but I'll always complain about that. And there wasn't enough Bix. I thought Bix had
Mm.
arguably the most interesting thing going on in this episode, in these 3 episodes, comparable to Mothma for sure, especially in the
Yeah.
third episode. But Bix with her PTSD,
Yeah.
and I didn't watch any like previously on or any recap of season 1, even though Will told me I should. So I went in kind of like still, okay, so here we go again. And I was surprised, and this is a strength to the writing, how quickly I was able to put pieces together of what was
Mm.
going on, who was who, and also recall events from not only from season 1 just in general, but I do remember what happened to Bix and why she is behaving the way she is. And I was thinking about this, like in season 1 they basically mind rape her,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And then so she's dealing with that, and you can see it very subtly, um and in these quiet moments. And then in the third episode she's confronted with potentially getting raped
Yeah.
physically by the lieutenant.
Hmm.
um Disney would never let that happen. Um,
Well.
so and also she's a freaking badass because man, she needed no help. She was total
Yeah.
self-defense. It was very awesome,
Hmm.
awesome
It was.
scene, uh, even though the context like gross. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I really I essentially, and it wasn't just Bix. I found everything to do with the harvest. Like there was fear. We understood why there was fear there.
Hmm.
Um, the threat of the visas. The also that these are characters who we know are close to Cassian, and he's not there as their protector, and so like the precariousness of their situation throughout these 3 episodes really had me intrigued. So
Yeah.
that was my favorite storyline, followed very closely, arguably just because of the way it ended. But Mon Mothma's stuff, everything to do with the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. That was. Yeah. I would agree with you. Yeah. Going back to Bix and that story, her arc. I was just like, poor. It's just poor woman's been through the ringer because you're right. I mean, she was tortured and stuff by the Empire in the first season. Then, with the second episode, they laid the foundation for what that lieutenant was. Whenever he was like, "Where's your husband?" and all that kind of stuff. Knowing that this regime is just all about abuse of power and control. You saw where that was going, and so no, they you know when they did have the scene in the third episode of the attempted sexual assault. It was, it wasn't gratuitous. I didn't think. I know there was some, just there's been a lot of discourse about that scene. Um, but in the context of the story, it made sense for why it was there. And like you said, I love the fact that she was able to defend herself and was able to get out of that situation. Um, but yeah, and also, as I mentioned, as far as my overall thoughts, the story on the Harvest Planet, I think it's Maya Rao, I believe, is what it was called. But it was just so many like historical parallels as far as show us your papers and the whole thing now with the present day with the visas and migrants and so it was very topical, both from a historical perspective um, but also present day. So that, yeah, I mean, everything about that storyline, and with the FedEx crew, and with and also it took me a minute to remember who Wilman, the teenager, or young man. I guess his dad was the one. His father was also tortured and killed by the Empire, so it makes sense why he was you know, while he was with the crew, and of course Brasso, uh, who was also, I thought, I really enjoyed Brasso. Seeing him again, great. I've always liked this character. Of course, he was, whenever they did have uh, Cassian's mother's funeral. He was, I remember him hitting the Imperials with a brick and all that kind of stuff. But also, uh, with this storyline here, he was like turned over by who they thought was a friend, but turns out he was a low level collaborator with the Empire. So all those things about that storyline with the Harvest Planet, really, really, I agree with you. I think it was probably, I agree, that was number one storyline for me as well. And then the wedding with Mon Mothma, yeah, and just again have her having to get her hands started getting her hands dirty with her conversations with Luthen and the whole thing going on with Ty, and with with his marital problems and financial problems, and how he tried to, like, how he went from being like this big talker, Tay, you know like, oh, I'm Mr. Rebellion. I don't know if this conversation is maybe too much for you in the first season, to now he's like the guy who's just like down on his luck, and he's trying to bribe Mon Mothma. So yeah, those elements too were like very, very strong.
Yeah, so with the Mon Mothma stuff, and I started to realize I had similar sentiments last season as well. Her husband is fascinating.
He is.
Period. He gives a speech at the end of the second episode. And it says, "My hope is that you move past this cloud of sadness. Pleasure, gaiety, amusement. These are the hidden things. Joy will not announce its arrival. You need to listen for it and be mindful of how fleeting it can be." And it's such a good, I can appreciate the words, because at first it kind of took me off guard, because I'm like, oh, that's actually a good fatherly toast for a wedding where he's
Hmm.
giving away his daughter. And like you could see, even though to some extent he's a dirtbag. like, like like it's not a loving relationship between these two. They whatsoever. I mean, at one point it might have been, but things have changed. He accuses Ty of being um her boy toy, and her
Hmm.
boyfriend's upset, and all this, and there, throughout this entire thing, like, I think I paid more attention to Pyrian than I did Tay, just
Hmm.
because, or Ty. Is it Tay or Ty?
Tay.
Okay.
Yeah.
He because he didn't say as much, but the camera kept cutting to him, and
Hmm.
a lot of observations. See, so, and I feel like they're building up to something with him, um for sure, because I mean, there's a war going on,
Yeah.
albeit a secret war, but there's a war, and he has his suspicions of his wife, and she has hers, and everything. But specifically, why this speech I think is so good is because that pretty much ends the first, like, this storyline in that second episode, and then the ending of the third episode is, like, Mon Mothma realizes that her best friend, her dear old friend Tay, is gonna get killed.
Yeah.
And she's at fault for this. Just like she's the reason, and her rebellion and leading this rebellion is the reason why she just had to marry off her daughter, even though the match, no chemistry.
None.
So,
Yeah.
so there's so much mom guilt. So for them to juxtapose that reality with her honestly living out exactly what Pyrian says in his speech in the previous
Hmm.
episode, like, she finds the joy, the music is playing, and everything. I thought that was so good. So
Yeah.
good that I got pissed off at the editing
Oh
because
yeah.
I had whiplash. I think
Yeah.
last week when we were talking about The Last of Us, and we had these two critical things going on, one in Jackson and one with Joel and Ellie at the ski lodge, the
Mhm,
editing allowed scenes to breathe, allowed
mhm,
specifically storylines. I don't know what happened to the editors with episode 3, but that towards the end, I was like, you need to stop. We get it. I can't
yeah.
like it was it turned
Mm.
me off.
Huh.
I was just like, okay, this is driving me crazy. It just felt too much like they overplayed it. Initially it was
Mm,
fine, and then I was like,
mhm.
okay, so we're still doing this 10 minutes later? We're still doing this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think because on first watch, it did not I did not notice it, but I watched the episode again this evening before we recorded, and I see what you're talking about. It is very on the second watch, it is very distracting in some respects because it does it is over edited. I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that where they went wrong was because they were really juxtaposing
Hmm.
Mon Mothma and this
Hmm.
this dance, but also her like grief
Yeah.
internally
Yeah.
with 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 a fight.
Yeah.
And so to me, like for lack of better articulation, like there's both scenes had so much noise that
Hmm.
really to get away with that much back and forth, you needed one of them to be quiet and one of
Hmm.
them to be loud. So you had a good juxtaposition. Instead, it just felt like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, sensory overload. Yeah.
you, you're
God,
dealing with three storylines this whole time. You could have ended this one like 15 minutes ago, and then we could have had the full like sequence play out. Like I think maybe that especially towards the end, but I've beaten that point to death at this point. So I'm gonna try to move past it. But
yeah.
I do think they started off stronger with balancing the three storylines. And
Mm.
yeah, technically there's four because we get some Imperial, which
I guess.
all of the Empire stuff did for me. And I was just like, damn it, Ben Mendelsohn, you're a fantastic actor. It's just like,
He
I
is.
love you. You're
Yeah.
so good. Like
He is.
the whole Gorgum project introduction. I love that scene so much. There's something like and Will, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but
Yeah.
there was something about that scene that just felt so like funny, but also like, okay, these guys are bad people.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he plays essentially a propaganda built movie
Hmm.
for other empire imperial leaders
Yeah.
to get them on board
Yeah.
with this thing.
Yeah, that scene, yeah, it was just again, as I said, my overall thoughts. This is when I really enjoyed this show because it just nails it with the with like you said, and it's funny because I was listening there was I think to interview with Mendelsohn. I think Tony Gilroy had to pull him back because at first he was playing Krennic as too mustache twirly,
Mhm.
and so he had to tell him to dial it back a bit. And by dialing it back, yeah, it makes that scene works so well because yeah, I mean, he is, he's a propaganda machine, and also thinking about like other elements, even like in the story, like going back to Montha, how Gorham is such a pivotal place in the galaxy because
Mhm.
you had the wedding party member who talked about, yeah, my
Yeah.
one parent's from Naboo, but my other parent's from Gorham. Of course, first season you had the trade lines and stuff, and the propaganda, and of course, the using using this project to like say it's going to help us with our energy dependence, and even though
Mhm.
we all know that this Calcite is just going to be used to for the Death Star,
Yeah.
but everything about it, and just and the way that, because I understand from the interviews with Tony Gilroy that the Gore massacre is a big thing in Star Wars, because it's like, if you've watched Rebels, you know that incident is what is the final straw to get Mon Mothma to leave the Senate.
Mm.
And yeah,
Spoiler alert.
yeah. Um, but I mean, Tony Gilroy's been very clear that they know the massacre is coming, and we all, yeah. But they're going to play this out over over the course of, I think, 3 or 4 episodes. And so I like the way that they use this first batch to sort of lay the foundation. That it's not just going to just pop up on us. They're going to, they're going to show how. What was so genius about it was the use of propaganda, and again,
Well,
yeah,
the use of it, like what I thought was genius about it is not necessarily the use of it, because I'm used to that, like the Imperial
yeah,
doing very dictatorial
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Dictatorship shit.
yep,
Yes.
yep,
But the fact that the scene consists of him trying to convince the others
mm-hmm,
who are on a part of that on
yeah,
board. And like even Deirdre says like, "Oh, I know Krennic offered this to me. I don't want that."
right, right, yeah,
like
yeah,
like I think in a way, by allowing Krennic to behave in that manner, with all that freaking ego, and
mm-hmm.
showing that video, and like bringing up what the guys from the
Ministry,
enlightenment, which is
ministry,
basically their PR people.
yeah, the Ministry of Truth. I thought immediately, I was like, man, they're like pulling out 1984 in this thing.
I could have sworn I don't think they said the Ministry of Truth. I could have sworn it was
No, no,
like
no,
Ministry
no.
of
It was the Ministry of
Enlightenment.
Enlightenment. No, it was in
Yeah.
1984. It's the Ministry of Truth. I was just saying
Oh,
that,
okay.
but yeah, in the show they call them the Ministry of Enlightenment, I think is
Yeah.
what they call them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but then you see the hesitancy. You see
yeah,
there's multiple conversations, and then you continue that with Deirdre obviously being nominated to take the lead,
yep,
and then kind of being forced to in the end, even though she didn't want it. And
yeah,
then speaking about Deirdre, I called it last season. Like I remember this. I remember when Cyril and Deirdre met. Hard
yep,
eyes. Hard eyes.
yep,
Weird
yep.
hard eyes.
Weird hard
And
answers.
you know what? So here's what I couldn't figure out
Yeah,
while watching Cyril and Deirdre,
yeah.
especially with the mom. They're not married yet.
No,
Okay. But they are knocking boots for sure.
they're
Um,
definitely, yeah, yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
I like Deirdre and how she handled Cyril's mom. Like I was
Oh,
like,
that
hats
was,
off to you.
yeah,
Like and I'm glad we didn't get too much. Like it's weird. I did feel like the first episode up until we finally see Deirdre. I was like the whole episode being like, "Where's Cyril?
yeah, yeah,
Where's that asshole?
yeah.
Where is
Where's
he?
cereal? Where's
Where's
cereal?
Cyril?
Yeah,
Like I see Deirdre. Where's the other one?" And
yeah.
then we finally see him, but we don't get a lot of them.
No,
Like
no.
that. Like I think why a strength of these 3 episodes is the heroes are dealing with some high stakes situations, of course,
Mm-hmm,
but it's all the character foes, like your Krennic or
mm-hmm.
your Tarkin or whatever. You guys all know I'm bad with names of characters.
No, no, but
Um,
Tarkin was referenced. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like they're not directly facing off with these guys. Instead, we got a lieutenant here.
mm-hmm,
we
mm-hmm.
have we have these imbeciles who Cassian has to help, but also has
Okay.
to escape from.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. He's, yeah.
like we have these, and then with Mon Mothma, it's more of a political, rightfully so, Prowse of like friendships and being a mom and the sacrifices that she's making to move forward with this rebellion. So
Mhm.
it's it was that was very unexpected, but I'm glad because I felt like it was just a perfect amount of Krennic, Deirdre, Cyril
Yeah.
to get us through this and to really launch us into this second chapter of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think they did do a balance of overall a really good thing. And even though I agree with you that the story with Cassian and the proto rep and the other rebel cell, even though I felt I was like you, it there were parts of it where I did feel kind of checked out. It was very important to establish. And again, we're 4 years prior to the Battle of Yavin. And so, at this point, the alliance is still that element of distrust is out is everywhere. I mean, you see it with Luthen and his interactions uh with Mon Mothma. You see it with these other rebel cells that are out there. Thinking about Star Wars Rebels, which is the animated show. We see. We also saw it there, and so I even though there were parts of it where I was just like, ugh, it does help to establish. It just gives us a sort of a foundation for like the rebellion wasn't all like cooking, from the get. We gotta grow to that point. So just like we saw Cassian grow in the first season, and how this episode starts with him, at the base, and just talking with the young lady who is the defector, and she's sort of, she's still questioning, is she doing the right thing and stuff. So there were elements in that in Cassian's story that I thought were good and necessary, but there were elements of it where I did feel like they went a little too long. But we do get that great shot at the end though of establishing that this was the Yavin 4, and so again, hope is on the horizon. Even if these like even that rebel cell that was there by the end of the episode, they were starting to like come together. So yeah, it was probably the weak. I won't say the maybe weakest is not the right word, but it was not the most engaging story of the other three that we had in this opening set. But I think it did serve the purpose that it needed. It just maybe went a little too long in some places.
Yeah, I think they could have done better.
Yeah, yeah,
They could have done everything you just talked about, but it could have been more engaging. And
yeah,
um, yeah, um, I think I've shared all of my thoughts about
yeah.
Andor and these first 3 episodes. So unless you had anything else to say,
No, I think we covered all the major beats of the first 3 episodes. So
yep. All
yeah.
right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBLMONT. Please follow our crew on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Scene and Nerd, on Blue Sky. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and threads at scene_n_nerd, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.